Hello, this is Wendy Bialis-Odell, the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards. I am here with Chris Rouleau, Coordinator of Curriculum, to provide you with an overview of work that has been completed this spring and what you can expect for next school year with regard to standards-based instruction and grading and support for teaching and learning. In this presentation, I will share information about the restructuring of support that will be provided to all teachers through the Curriculum, Instruction, and Educational Standards Department beginning next school year. I will also highlight changes that were made to the 2013-14 standards-based grading benchmarks based on feedback received from teachers. Finally, Chris and I will share information about the recent grade level meetings we conducted and the action plans to address many of the concerns teachers have expressed. You will learn what you can expect for next year with regard to new instructional materials and program changes. As you may know, the curriculum department will be restructured next year to better reflect the needs expressed by teachers and the nature of our integrated approach to providing support for standards-based instruction. Historically, our department has been structured around specific curriculum areas. Beginning next year, our structure will be aligned by level, elementary and secondary. We no longer will have subject area curriculum specialists. Rather, we will have 8 staff development assessment specialists serving the needs of our sites. After budget reductions, we had budget capacity for 6 positions, and our plan was to have 3 positions assigned to elementary sites and 3 assigned to secondary sites. However, thanks to additional funding from Student Services, 2 additional positions were secured, and the curriculum department was able to hire 8 staff development assessment specialists, 4 for elementary and 4 for secondary. The staff development assessment specialist and the curriculum specialist positions are different. Our current positions serve all K-12 teachers in 1 or more content areas. The new staff development assessment specialists will be clustered around grade bands and assigned to specific sites, where they will support all teachers in all content areas. Their work will be focused on supporting teachers in implementing the curriculum, use of research-based instructional strategies, and assessment development. The specialists will work with each site's principal and staff development team to determine a staff development plan for the school year that aligns site and system staff development priorities. We know the needs of sites and departments vary. We believe that by assigning specialists to sites, we will be able to differentiate professional development in a manner that is meaningful to teachers. And by working collaboratively, the specialists will help share resources and effective instructional practices across content areas and schools. Please be assured that the program improvement process and the content-specific work will continue. Teacher leadership has historically been essential to the success of program improvement and will continue to play an important role. You can expect to see your site's staff development assessment specialist in your building on a regular basis. Our elementary specialists next year will be Robin Gonzalez, Shelley Drake, Tammy Provart, and Sarah Luby Morris. We look forward to working with you in our new structure. The second topic I want to share with you is around the standards-based grading benchmarks. On March 22nd, I sent to you a copy of the revised benchmarks for the 2013-14 school year, along with the standards-based grading continuous improvement plan. I would like to take just a few minutes to review the benchmark information with you. As you know, we have been working with a 3-year implementation plan for standards-based grading. However, based on teacher feedback, we made an adjustment to the 3-year implementation plan and added a 4th year. You will see in the newly revised benchmark document that next year, 2013-14, We will continue to work on current benchmarks without adding any new benchmarks. The specific benchmarks we will continue to work on include academic misconduct, assessments, formative feedback, multiple opportunities, and the 0 to 4 scale. This benchmark specifically relates to grading at the secondary level. We know, however, that through our assessment work, we will address concerns about better defining the elementary 1 through 4 scale as well. All of these benchmarks are highlighted in yellow on the benchmark document. There have also been some language changes to provide greater clarity, and those changes were highlighted in green. The third topic to discuss is feedback from the recent grade level meetings and the action plans to address many of the concerns teachers have expressed. We held meetings with teachers at each grade level, with attendees representing most sites at each meeting. Teachers expressed their needs in the areas of instructional materials, assessments, and other areas such as the desired report card revisions. In the meetings, we heard common themes across all grade levels. Teachers told us that our K-6 report cards need to be revised. Our assessments need to be revised or created. We need to check them for quality and align them across content areas as much as we can. Teachers expressed a desire to have all the assessments more aligned with our instructional materials, and to make it all make sense and be manageable. We know that we have some gaps in instructional materials that need to be addressed, and we heard from every level that a clear scope and sequence for reading language arts is needed. We know that for elementary teachers, the curriculum cycle is in constant motion. As the state changes standards and we learn more about our learners and how to better differentiate instruction, we need to make changes, and those changes may not always align with the 7-year curriculum cycle. We are committed to responding to student needs and at the same time doing it in a way that is supportive of teachers. To that end, in the next several slides, Chris Rouleau will share specifics for your grade level about what you can expect for next year with regard to instructional materials, assessment development, and other curriculum needs.
Hello, first grade teachers. Chris Rouleau is here with you now. But before I begin, I need to make a little disclaimer. If you've been in a room with me in the last couple of weeks, or you've listened for the last 10 seconds, you'll hear that I'm a little on the squeaky side. Was kind of hoping I could be beyond this before doing these screencasts, and I waited as long as I possibly could to create the screencasts, but my voice has not returned. So I've been working on this for 5 weeks now. Can't say I'm getting used to it, can't say I'm enjoying it, but I'm living with it. So I'm hopeful that you can live with it too for the next few minutes. As you just heard from Wendy, during our grade level meetings, we heard some consistent themes across grades K through 6. But we also heard some specific needs at grade levels, and that's what I'm going to share with you for the next little while. First of all, this is one we heard at all grades, and that is that we need to work on some revisions for our report card. We need to create a more unified and clear card that has parent-friendly language, but that reflects better grade level learning. We believe that when we've completed this work, especially with the recommendations that we receive from teachers, that you will have fewer standards to mark, because we plan to move to overall marks for science, social studies, health, art, and technology literacy. The reporting standards will all be revised, or many of them could be revised, and we'll still list those on the report card, but we will only ask you to put a single summary mark for each area, rather than marking each of those standards separately. And finally, we will return the plus and minus to the marks for OS and N that you use in the social studies and work habits section of the card. These report card revisions will be drafted by curriculum staff We will turn them back to teachers to give us additional input for revisions before the school year is over. And then when we have them all submitted before the end of June, we will be ready to go with new report cards in the fall. In addition to changes to the report card, we do have some other things that will change in some of our content areas. First of all, in the area of reading and language arts, we know that there are some needs for materials, and there certainly are some curricular needs. We've heard from you that additional resources, particularly bookroom books and classroom libraries, and especially nonfiction texts aligned with science and social studies would be really helpful. To be honest, at this point, I don't know how much of our capital budget we will have to apply to those purchases this year, but we know that it's important, and whatever capacity we have, we are committed to being able to support you in that way. As for core adoption work, there are a couple things that I can speak to that I'm confident will be happening. First of all, we are adopting a new core writing program for all of our sites. We have been hearing for several years that writing, as it's laid out in trophies, was just not getting the job done. So the result is that individual teachers and sites have purchased materials, have received training to be able to address the gap that they were feeling for a writing program. We're now in a position to adopt a core program district-wide, and we'll be adopting, at the recommendation of a team that studied programs all year long, the Benchmark Writers Workshop program. For those of you who may have attended Steve Dunn trainings in the last couple of years, maybe through the Summer Institute or at your site, you'll feel some familiarity because Steve Dunn is one of the authors of this program. We will all be trained in the fall, and we will work on implementation all through the year. Unfortunately, we aren't able to get materials until after July 1st because of purchasing these with next year's budget. We will do everything we can to get the materials in the district as soon as we can, and for people who might be interested in picking them up before the start of workshop, we will certainly let you know when you might be able to do that. We know getting materials in your hands is important, and we'll do whatever we can to expedite it. Another request that we've heard, and we heard clearly in the last 2 weeks from all grade levels, is we need a consistent scope and sequence for reading. Trophies was our scope and sequence when we adopted it 8 years ago. However, our standards have changed, our use of data and intervention has changed, and we're using some different instructional models, such as Reader's Workshop, than many people were using 8 years ago. The result is that we need a consistent scope and sequence that will help everyone be confident about what the grade level curriculum expectations are, what comes before, and what will come after. That's work that the writing team will do this summer. We also heard very clearly that we need to make the assessments in reading language arts manageable. We need to take a look at what our assessments can do for us, which will get the most information, which we really need to make sure we're doing, and which we could let go of if we don't have time to do them all. We know that assessing with young learners is challenging, and we need to look at how we make that work more efficiently for you and for your students. Also, in the area of reading, we're able to provide some additional materials right from the beginning for guided reading. We're providing each site for your book room 12 copies of 35 titles of benchmark guided reading texts, and they're mostly at levels C, D, and E. These titles are matched specifically with kindergarten, science, and social studies topics because those were levels that kindergarten really was lacking, and with the Common Core state standards, we are expecting that all of our kindergartners are reading to that level, so we really needed to address those text needs. However, we know that we have first graders who are not at that level when they enter first grade, and they need those texts as well. So those will be in your book rooms. They've been ordered already, and we will get them to you as soon as we have them. In the area of math, there will be no changes to our core instructional materials. But we have heard from you that we need to do some work around clarifying our scope and sequence and how the standards align to our instructional materials. We've heard teachers express frustration that there's so much in the instructional materials that isn't reflected in their grade level standards. The reason is that our Minnesota math standards are mastery standards. They are written to be the things that every first grader has to master by the end of the year for continued success, according to the progression of the standards. However, there's a lot more than what's in those mastery standards that first graders need to learn in order to be successful in future years of mathematics instruction. We know that because you've had a lot of questions about that, we need to do some work to clearly identify which of those topics in your instructional materials really need more attention and which you really don't need to worry about mastery, but you do need to make sure that you teach. We'll take a look at math assessments as well, particularly looking at the rubrics and the quality of the data that you're able to collect that will help inform you about how well your students have learned. Finally, in the area of math, you will be receiving some text sets. They're called math reads. They come from Scholastic, and they will come to you. It's a set, 5 copies each of 25 different texts that we're purchasing for you to be able to use shared reading or read alouds. And what they'll do is they'll help you infuse math vocabulary into your everyday classroom. We've heard from teachers that being able to use academic language and math vocabulary is really important, but that you're not always sure where to find those materials. And more importantly, how those materials align to your math instructional materials that you already have in math expressions and how they align to the standards. So before we send these materials to you, we'll make sure the alignment is done. They're not required, but they will be a great resource. They've got some great math in them, and there's some really fun stories. In science, you have a new kit. It's the kit you're being trained on today. It's called Insects and Plants, and will address those life science standards that are in first grade. So your 3 kits moving ahead to next year will be Insects and Plants, Pebbles, Sand and Silt, and Solids and Liquids. All FOSS kits that really have been developed with the standards in mind. In the area of science, you'll have 1 new kit, Insects and Plants, which you'll be trained on today. It will address those life science standards that appear in first grade, and we know has been a frustration for you this year. So you'll have 3 kits, Insects and Plants, Pebbles, Sand and Silt, and Solids and Liquids. Reporting standards have all been revised, and they have been aligned to the kits, and assessments will be created also aligned, of course, to the standards and to the kits, but it will be done in a way that can be managed. Any gaps that have still been identified between instructional materials and standards will be addressed this summer. In social studies, everyone K-12 has new standards. However, the standards are very much aligned with our current materials. We've had first grade teachers taking a look at that, identifying the fit and what gaps there might be that we will address. We've known for 2 years that the standards were going to be revised. There have been many versions of them, and finally, just in the last couple of weeks, they were approved by the governor, and now the expectation is that we will implement them in the fall. Sandra Day has been working with teachers to make sure we are prepared for this. We have draft reporting standards and assessments will be created. But once again, the name of the game here is making it manageable. And finally, in the areas of art, health, technology, literacy, we've heard very clearly your frustration and your desire to fit all of this in your day, and the reality that you just don't have the time, and that we haven't provided enough guidance to help you make instructional decisions about how to fit it all in. We will review all of those standards, and along with the report card work, of course, assessments, rubrics, and instructional expectations. We'll make revisions this summer and do our very best to put together a package that will be teacher friendly and really good for kids. So in summary, what you can expect next year, a couple of new things: the Benchmark Writers Workshop materials, the new FOSS Insects and Plants Kit, and that popularly requested scope and sequence for reading language arts. You can expect revisions to your report cards and assessments, and some real work to align core instructional materials with standards, assessments, and supplemental materials. And finally, you can expect some really terrific support from the Staff Development Assessment Specialist team and all of us in the curriculum department. We are committed to the success of your students and your success. We know this is important work, but that we have our collective commitment with you to improving and aligning our work, our standards, our instructional materials, assessments, and our reporting practices. We know that work needs to be done. We look forward to partnering with you on writing teams this summer and beyond to be able to have a curriculum that is what's best for our students, that makes sense to parents, and makes your job and the hard work you do every day in your classrooms much more manageable than it has been in the recent past. Thanks for your attention. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to give me a call.